All right, Victorum Gaming fans, we're back with another SPQR video as part of our sort of faction review and overview series. We're taking a look at Caesar's Legions today, kind of the inspiration behind the game here. And one of the two Roman lists, there's Imperial Rome, of course, which we'll get to later. But as usual, they start off with a little bit of history and background about Rome and the army and so on, and then we jump right into basically the army and its special rules and units. Out of all the lists, really, probably along with Sparta, Caesar's Legions is not all that diverse, really. You get basically three units, three units, the hero, and then you're really spoiled on special characters for this list. But just regular units. This is going to be a bit repetitive as far as like what your army's going to look like, because it's really just going to be the same type of units over and over again, but we'll get to that in a minute. So what makes these guys really cool, especially in campaign play, is that they have another army special rule here where it's called Medicus support, which is basically a free talent that the army just gets just for the fact that you're playing Caesar's Rome here, or Caesar's Legions. So even if a Caesar's Legions warband does not have a Medicus traveling with it, it's very likely to have medical support close by. A warband of Caesar's Legions is always counted as having access to the Healing Hands talent. So basically, if one of your heroes actually takes some permanent damage, you can easily heal that. So you don't necessarily even have to take that talent for a hero. It just comes standard with the army. So really cool for, again, like campaign play. So moving on, your hero clocks in at 50 denarii, which is pretty standard. Range +1, melee +2, 2 melee dice, 1 agility, 2 bravery, no stock armor, and 2 wounds. So again, very standard. And then you get a pretty good range of things to buy here, but again, it's much more sort of streamlined than maybe the Britain faction or the Gauls or Germanians, where you're really, your heroes are basically either going to be geared towards being in a cavalry unit or leading one of the legionary units. So you can buy a large shield, cuirass for 15, chainmail shirt for 20, which really is some of the best armor you get there, pilum for 5, dagger, which seems like a waste, sword for sure is probably going to be one of your most common purchases there. He can also carry his own standard, which is interesting, and you can also mount him for another 30 denarii. And a really cool special rule, Hero of Rome. The Republic produced some great heroes in its time, though it also produced fools. Every time a hero receives a bonus characteristic from going up a level, roll a dice. On a 1, he increases no characteristic at all. On a 5 or 6, however, you get to increase 2 characteristics by a +1. So, really neat little feature there, although it can come back to bite you at the worst times. But, really, really cool hero. Again, mainly going to be geared towards being put in a cavalry unit or one of the legionary units. There's not much else that you can really use these guys for. But that being said, a Roman hero is still pretty dang solid. So, moving on to the first of the minion units. So we got the sort of generic Republican cavalry unit, clocks in at a base 28 denarii, so not cheap. Range 1, melee 2, 2 dice, +2 bravery, +4 on the armor, and 2 wounds. So these guys come with chainmail shirts, the horse, of course, small shields, short spear, and swords. So all that is already reflected in the denarii price. One model can buy a horn, and another can buy a standard. And they do come with the hit and run rule, which is pretty cool, because these guys are basically somewhere between a medium and heavy cavalry unit as equipped there. So the horses don't have barding, so they're not slowed, but these guys are definitely about as armored as can be. And the small shield is obviously not going to be as good as a large shield, but these guys definitely have some staying power, so a worthwhile investment there, although again, a good chunk of points too per model. So no ranged here whatsoever, so these guys are basically going to be going out and hunting down units, but they can get the job done in melee. Or if you want to kind of make this more of a cavalry themed force, you can certainly charge in and get some solid damage done in with larger units. So really cool unit for the Romans. Definitely sort of a buzzsaw if you use them right. And that hit and run ability is also very cool, which you normally see more on lighter cavalry units. Okay, and then we come to your other unit of minions here, the Roman Legionary, the ubiquitous Legionary. So 24 denarii, very expensive compared to some of the things we've been looking at so far in the review series. But a move of 5, because they are loaded down with a chainmail shirt as standard. Range 1, melee 2 melee dice, no extra agility, but really good on the bravery and armor fronts there. +3 armor is awesome. And again, that 24 points reflects the fact that they do have the chainmail shirt, large shield, and sword, which is really all you need. You can upgrade them with some Pila if you want, just for that extra ability there. And then slings seems like kind of a waste. Really not sure why you would want to buy that. These guys are going to do one thing, and that's really get into combat and start chopping up your opponent's units while really resisting a lot of it with their excellent armor and all the parries they have. You can also buy a horn in a standard. We've talked about those many times. They do have the shield wall ability, which is really cool. So basically, if all models in the Legionary unit are in base contact with one another and the unit numbers at least 10, they get a bonus parry. So again, just really increasing their defense. A well-placed and sizable Legionary unit is going to be a tough nut to crack. They can also form Testudo. So to form that, all members must be in contact with one another and must number at least 10 again. The unit can do a special action. From that point on, the unit's movement is halved, but it may re-roll all armor checks made to defend against range attacks. Testudo is disbanded immediately by the unit performing a melee action on any model in the unit being out of contact with at least 2 other models in the same unit. This may be done as a move action on the part of the player or by his opponent causing casualties. But nonetheless, you're virtually immune to most incoming missile fire. So just a really rock solid infantry unit, and really should be the bulk of your list here. Just unit after unit of Legionaries. Using them properly, these guys will get the job done. You just want to make sure you're not getting outflanked. That's where the danger lies with these guys. So these guys will last and basically just grind the enemy down over time, especially when coupled with properly outkitted heroes, or if you're running special characters too. The third and final, I know, whopping selection here, unit that you get access to are Scorpio teams. And really, not much in the way of stats here. The machine itself really just has 4 wounds and +1 on its armor. Comes with a couple of Legionaries that man it, of course, so slower movement because they do have chainmail. Range is only +1, as with the standard Legionaries. Then you see that there's basically like literally 2 Legionaries as far as stats are concerned. And then it does count as an infantry minion. It consists of 2 Legionaries and a Scorpion. May only perform a move or shoot action if it first performs a special action. A shoot action may only be performed if at least 1 Legionary is in contact with the Scorpio. And then the guys, of course, come with chainmail shirts and swords. No shields, though. And then the stats for the Scorpio down below are pretty cool, but there's, again, I think a pretty big downside here. And again, it's cost you 80 denarii. When performing a shoot action, it has the following profile: range 40, so the longest range in the game, because slings are only 30 in comparison. It does have lethal 3 and smasher, which is really, really cool. So basically, the shot is not getting parried, and it's -3 to their armor. And a Scorpio can remove more than 1 model with a single hit in the same way as a hero. So very cool at whittling down opposing units. The problem is you're basically only going to get 1 shot a turn, because you do have to do a special first. If you need to move, that's another thing to consider. And with it only moving 5 inches, you really got to get these things placed at the start of the game, or try not to move it as much as possible, because really every turn you're not shooting with this thing is a waste. And the other problem, at least in my experience in seeing people play this, is the Legionaries only have that +1 range. So if you're shooting at long range, you're needing 6s. How often are you going to really be rolling 6s? So the effectiveness of these is a bit questionable, at least in my experience again, unless you're taking a whole lot of them. But then again, that's a lot of points to really get really questionable effect. I mean, you can kill 3 models basically with that. So where it might shine, though, is like basically trying to snipe heroes, or possibly dropping cavalry units, things like that. or not cavalry units, but like individual cavalry models at a time. Or, if you're facing stuff like chariots, or even whittling down elephants and things like that. But just sort of bog standard here without any kind of like way of modifying it. At best, you're going to be hitting on 5s if you're in short range, which again, 20 inches or less for that. That's not that puts you in range of other enemies who will be looking to basically remove the crew, or the machine itself only has 4 wounds and only at +1 armor, so it's not too hard to kill these things, or have these things be run down by cavalry. So really, you're going to probably want to put a hero here who's geared towards ranged fighting, but again, that's more points invested for, I don't know, questionable returns. So they certainly look cool. They certainly have a place, but I really wish that these were maybe a little bit more effective. But if you guys disagree or have any other thoughts on them, definitely put them in the comments. We'd love to hear some opinions on that. And that is it on the minions. So now we turn to the massive list of heroes, named heroes, and that's where this list is really spoiled. Now, Caesar's Legion does have a gigantic mercenary list. So you get Britain, Gaul, and Germania, which only makes sense historically, and that's really where you can add the quantity, because as you saw with the other minions, the cavalry and the legionaries, they're pretty expensive. Man to man here. So you will definitely be outnumbered in most games, and you're going to have to really play smart and have the dice go your way. So using those as mercs can definitely add some quantity to your quality. And then they have a really, really good selection of mercs from the actual mercenary list too. So you get Balearic Slingers, which are just top of the line, as are Cretan Archers, Gasetos, and then you have access to both the Numidians as well. So certainly in a more of like maybe a tournament list or heads up list, really you can actually quite well diversify that with mercs. But in a campaign, if you're constantly having to buy mercs to sort of fill out your numbers, that extra tax, which we'll cover in another video on campaigns, that can certainly be annoying. All right, on to the heroes of legend. Caesar is one of the heavy hitters, of course, as he should be. 180 denarii, level 5 cavalry hero. So move 6, range 1, 2 melee, +2 melee, only 2 melee dice. Would have maybe expected a third one there. +1 agility. His bravery is off the charts at +5, +3 armor and 5 wounds. And he has several talents: battlefield control, divine luck, inspire and elevate, loyal bodyguard, motivation, and voice of command. Comes equipped with a cuirass, which is where we're getting that armor, a horse, and a sword. So really awesome special rule for him. So after forces are deployed, but before the battle begins, he can make an opposed bravery check with an enemy hero, which, really looking at a stat, he's going to win that most of the time. For every point he wins by, one enemy unit of his choice can be removed from the battlefield, so you can really cripple an opponent's deployment and game plan with Caesar. And then at the start of every turn after the first, the enemy unit can attempt a bravery check. If it's successful, it can move on to the table from their deployment zone, one of the edges. If no table edge exists, for whatever reason, then you, as the Caesar player, can choose what table edge it derives from. So you can really just royally screw up someone's game plan with that. And his talents, to run through those real quick, he basically has one of the entire tech trees. So battlefield control, basically, his army's never forced to, our warband, never forced to take will to fight checks, although they may voluntarily fail those after a certain point is reached. He has divine luck ×1, so basically once per game you can reroll 1 die. He has Inspire and Elevate, which is more of a campaign ability, not so much a heads-up ability, but basically after a battle, you can pick one of your actual infantry models from a minion unit and upgrade them to a level hero by paying a 25-point tax. Really cool for campaign play. He's got Loyal Bodyguard, which we see in a couple of the other heroes here, which basically you have to have another hero of equal or lesser level next to him, so within an inch, so basically base contact. And then you can direct all the attacks onto that other hero. So really, in addition to his 5 wounds, if you run a properly kitted out hero who's just geared towards parrying and surviving, Caesar's never really going to die. Then motivation, so basically you can choose a unit within 12 that hasn't activated, and that unit gains 3 actions that turn, which again can be absolutely brutal with sort of the Roman meat grinder that you can get going with the legionary units. And voice of command, every friendly unit within 6 of him gains +1 on bravery checks, so you're going to really have to position him quite well, because again, 6 inches is not going to be much space. Basically, you're going to have to stack your Legionary units really close together. So that is Caesar. Caesar is absolutely badass. Certainly would recommend him for larger games or campaign play. Moving on to Pompey, is basically budget Caesar, what I call him. Only 130 denarii. He's only a level 3 hero, and really, the way his special ability is, it's really just good for campaign play. But, 2 melee, plus 2 melee there, 3 melee dice, really good bravery still, and good armor, and a solid chunk of wounds there of 3. He's got Inspire, Loyal Bodyguard, Motivation, and Voice of Command. Now, we've covered a couple of those already, so really the only thing that's different from Caesar there that we haven't talked about yet is Inspire, and basically friendly units within 12 can reroll Will to Fight. The other 3 are ones that we just talked about with Caesar. And he has a cuirass, horse, and a sword, just like Caesar. But his ability here is awesome for campaign play. So he has deep pockets and is willing to spend on capable allies. If a warband wins a battle with Pompey in it, he will spend a fortune to see it enjoys continued success. The warband will immediately receive an amount of denarii equal to half the denarii value of the enemy warband that has just been beaten. So really, you can outpace people if you're running like a league or a campaign. And there's as long as you win, you're going to grow faster than your fellow players. All right, moving on to the most expensive of the Romans here, and really cool models for all these guys too, is Marcus Crassus, 225 points, so a giant chunk of points. He's a level 8 hero. His move is only down to 4, of course, because he is wearing a cuirass and he's on foot, so he's not going anywhere fast. Range is only +1, but that's not what he's about. +4 on melee with 3 dice is awesome. Really good agility, bravery at +3 armor, and 6 wounds. He is an absolute house, and he's basically tooled to just be an absolute badass in melee. So definitely a great infantry leader here. So he's got Blade Master, Dirty Fighting, Divine Luck ×2, Knockdown, Lethal Blade, Mighty Blow, Voice of Command, and Wall of Iron. And his special ability is really cool too. So Crassus, it's called Weakness of Others. Crassus is adept at spotting an opponent's weak point and exploiting it. Before any melee checks are made during a melee action involving Crassus, he can choose to cancel out any number of an opponent's parries by expending his own on a 1-to-1 basis. So if you're comfortable and think you've got a good setup where you're not too worried about him necessarily dying here, basically you can start negating an opponent's parries, and that way, ensuring that more damage is coming through too. And really, with some of his offensive abilities here, it's just awesome. So Blade Master basically gives him his sword when he's making melee attacks lethal 3 and Smasher. So basically, his attacks aren't getting parried, and it's -3 to their armor saves. And we'll couple that with another ability that we will mention a little bit down the road here. He's got Dirty Fighting, so basically he can try to knock down his opponents with an imposed bravery check. He's got Divine Luck ×2, so basically twice per game he gets to reroll dice, or like 2 individual dice. And he's got the Knockdown ability itself, so he only throws 1 melee dice, but if it's successful, there's no damage, but the opposing hero is knocked down. Lethal Blade is an earlier ability in the tech tree, which just gives his sword lethal 2, but Blade Master overrides that. And then he has Mighty Blow, which when you configure that with Blade Master, which is a passive ability, on Mighty Blow he only throws 1 melee dice, but if it hits with his +4 melee, you're rolling 2-ups, it's going to hit. But if it hits, it causes triple the wounds, and the enemy hero must also pass a bravery check or be knocked down. Now, the reason I mention that again is Blade Master, his sword is lethal 3, so it's going to be -3 to their armor. Chances are that wound is going through, which then causes triple the wounds, and Smasher means it's not getting parried. So really, it's a nasty little combo there. He's got Voice of Command like Caesar and Pompey, so again, we don't need to explain that. But he also has Wall of Iron, which gives him an extra parry with his sword, which does make up for the fact that he doesn't come with a shield. So really, really cool stuff there. Moving on to the last of the actual people here, Mark Antony, 175 points. So again, a great chunk of points, and is another foot hero, as we see here. He's level 6. Is wearing basically a cuirass as well, and range +1, melee 3 dice, okay agility, great bravery, and armor, and 5 wounds. He's got Darting Blade, Shield Bash, Shield Wall, and Wall of Iron, and just a cuirass and sword. Interesting ability here, Up Pluto's Arse. So the men serving under Antony could become fanatically loyal if an enemy unit in his warband fails a will to fight check within 12 of him. Instead of being removed from the table, they'll perform an immediate and free move action. They must move as close to him as possible, and this will count as fleeing from close combat. However, any casualties gained from this will not cause another will to fight check. So really interesting ability there, just to keep his guys from running off the board, basically. On his talent side, basically, so Darting Blade once per turn. If he kills an enemy in close combat, he gets an extra melee action for free, which is pretty nasty. Shield Bash, so basically it's a shield attack that can cause damage, and then also the ability to knock down. Now, curiously, if we look at the equipment there is no shield listed, so I'm not sure what was going on there. Shield Wall, +1 to his armor in close combat for an action, but -1 to his melee attacks. So you're kind of trading extra armor for not so much on the offense. And Wall of Iron, we already mentioned with Crassus, but it's another parry with his sword. And then Warlord did a cool thing, and they basically included Lucius Vorenus and Titus Polo from the Rome TV show. So much lesser heroes. Vorenus clocks in at 100. +3 melee is really good still, only 2 dice though. Really good agility, bravery, and armor, though. And he comes with Darting Blade, Shield Bash, Shield Wall, and Wall of Iron as well. So, like, literally the same talents that Antony had. But he has a neat little special ability. So, Duty is All. He's a staunch believer in the Republic. So any unit, Vorenus and any unit he leads will reroll failed bravery checks, which is pretty cool. A +3, chances are you're not going to be losing too many dudes off of that. That's really all there is to him. And then Polo is really a super budget named hero. Only 75 denarii, +2 melee, 3 dice though, in contrast to Vorenus. And then +2 bravery, +3 armor, 4 wounds. He's got some other abilities here: Dirty Fighting, Divine Luck, and Piercing Thrust. Divine Luck is, again, that reroll ability. Dirty Fighting is cool. We covered that under Crassus, but basically a chance to knock down someone. And then Piercing Thrust is -1 armor, -1 to the enemy's armor from that attack. And he's got this interesting little ability too called Heroic Rashness, where basically if he's involved in a combat with an enemy unit that is led by a hero, he has to pass a bravery check or be forced to challenge him. Now, he's only a level 2 hero, and he's not necessarily all that great, but his stats are still pretty decent all around with his abilities. He can definitely take on most sort of generic low-level heroes and expect to do reasonably well. Yeah, so basically he's forced to challenge, so that can get you into trouble sometimes, though. And then furthermore, if a unit he is leading flees from combat, he must take another bravery check, and if he fails, he actually is forced to stay, which can suck if it happens at the worst time. But all in all, that is the Caesar's Legion's force. So again, not the most diverse as far as just the strictly Roman units you get, but that being said, you don't necessarily need more. They have a really awesome cavalry unit, and the Legion is really, just a fantastic infantry unit. So it really just comes down to tactics and playing smart and really forcing your opponent to play to your strengths. So between the Legionaries and the cavalry and just properly outkitted heroes, you really should win sort of the war of attrition. You're not necessarily going to be the most offensively powerful, but all the defense and parries and other stuff, especially with the Legionary units, Shield Wall and Testudo, as long as you're not getting flanked and or certain enemy heroes are kind of wrecking your plans, this is still a great list. And then for larger games and other things, you can make up for some of the shortcomings of this list with a huge range of mercenaries. So again, you got basically the Celtic trifecta here: Britain, Gaul, and Germania, and then you actually have a selection of basically some of the best for that unit type under the actual mercenary list, which again we'll cover in a separate video. And again, really awesome and colorful heroes, certainly for larger heads-up games, but then also for campaign play as well. So hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you like that, go ahead and give the video a like and maybe a subscribe, and then stay tuned for more SPQR content.